Hey guys, it's reading day, and today's book is Bram Stoker's Dracula. We'll be right back. Grab your popcorn and snacks. Find a comfy spot, take a seat or lie down, and let me transport you to a place of fantasy, ghost stories, ancient legends, odd creatures, alien encounters, and other magical topics. You may even decide to join the conversation. From faraway lands to your own backyard, with a small dash of pixie dust. Turn out the lights and open your minds. The journey is about to begin. Good afternoon, everybody. Happy Sunday. Sorry for the little tiny delay. It's like Murphy's Law has been going on here. I think I might have some activity going on as well. Let me get in here. Hang on one second. Yeah, I might have some activity going on as well today. Yeah, I gotta do something real quick. Okay, I gotta check on somebody really quick, and then I will be with you guys in 1 second. Okay, just give me a minute. Okay, you're probably wondering what I just did, and the reason is, when I'm looking in here, it looks like my right eye is moving to the left, or to the right. I had a bit of an accident yesterday, and I've kind of been monitoring it. I was coming in through my front door, and somehow I slipped, and I got locked out a couple weekends ago, and so I have one of those metal security doors, and I leave it open now. I swing it open and leave it in the open position because just in case it swings shut behind me if I'm having to carry garbage out or something. And so yesterday I had gone out to get some pruning shears out of my front yard because I was going to go work in my backyard. And I tripped over something, and I didn't fall on the floor. I didn't fall on the ground. That was one thing that didn't happen. I did not fall on the ground. However, I did go down, and it happened so quickly. And I ended up hitting the door, and it was just a good thing that I didn't hit the steel part, because there's like a steel. Anybody that has those doors, because they're a security door, they have an extra ridge about this wide on there, and it's steel, and it covers any potential chance that somebody can get under there and unlock the door, with a credit card or anything. So I did not hit that. I don't think I hit that. I went down, impacted, looked up, shook my head, and I was okay. Right? I got back up. By the time I got in the house, I had a goose egg the size of a baseball. And so called my producer, who wasn't feeling good yesterday. She came over, picked me up, took me to the ER, and before that I gathered my stuff that I needed. Sorry, my contact is not sitting well. Gathered the stuff that I needed, and went to the ER and got clearance. Everything looked okay. And I ended up kind of spraining my big toe because of the way I went down. But it could have been a lot worse. If I had hit the security gate just right, on that spot where I explained, where it's like the hangover of the stainless steel, it probably would have put a gash in my head, because I remember when I impacted, I reached up and I thought, because it's on this side, I reached up and I thought, wow, no blood. Cool, So apparently that's like what the doctor told me was that is like the thickest part of your skull is where I impacted. So, I've been kind of watching it, and last night I could hardly walk. I was in tremendous pain trying to walk, and it seems like this morning it was bad, but not quite as bad. And then I went ahead and, because I do take, and as you guys know, I do take hydrocodone, and hydrocodone, unfortunately, doesn't work for muscles. Bad, if you pull your muscles and stuff. And I'm pretty sure I sprained my big toe, and that would be like a stretched tendon. So I knew the hydrocodone wasn't going to work for that. But I did this morning, about an hour or so, after an hour I got up, took a regular Tylenol 500, and I fell asleep again, and about 3 hours later I woke up, and I'm walking a lot better on it. The swelling went down and all that. So hopefully that was just me being off of it for 12 hours, and maybe the Tylenol helping. So hopefully that's the start of something good, that I'm going to be able to walk, decently again like a human being, because I don't think it was a really bad sprain. So. But in the meantime, my hat's on really loose, so if you see me start making adjustments up here during the read, it's because everything has slipped forward, because I can't put my hat on with the same tightness that I usually have it on. It's just it has to be loose. Anyway, I never even gave you guys my name, so I just went into this whole spiel. My name is Charlotte. I'm going to be your host, I hope, for the next hour. I'm also the owner of the California Haunts Paranormal Investigation Team based out of Sacramento, California. We're 45 strong up and down the state, which means if you think you have a paranormal thing going on in your home or apartment or business, we can help you. It might take us a couple days to get to you, but we definitely can help you out. If in the event that it does take us a couple days, what we'll do is we do have mediums on staff who can contact you and talk to you about what may or may not be going on. And in most cases, they can calm the energy down if it is something paranormal. Okay, but we will definitely get out there. That being said, if you're watching from Facebook, and a lot of you are, please feel free to hit that follow button if you haven't done that already. I'd appreciate it. We're always trying to build up our following, obviously, right? And be sure to comment. Chat room. I'll be able to see the chat room today. And be sure to, if you like what you hear and see today, give us a thumbs up. Give us a happy face. Something like that. Same thing with YouTube. I've got more than 1,000 videos sitting at YouTube. They're all this show. They're all different topics. I don't like to focus on the dead all the time, right? Because I'm a journalist, photojournalist, so I like to cover other things. Like I have covered the opioid epidemic, the alleged opioid epidemic. So I like to cover different things. So check it out. There's all kinds of topics over there you can check out. And there's also a bunch of folders over there with different topics like cryptids and whatnot. And seeing if there's a thing I can wipe. Yeah, right there. Making sure I have a rag and wipe because it gets hot in here for me. If you like cryptids, you'll find a folder on cryptids over there. And you can just go to that folder, decide who you want to hear. Or if you're in Medium Nancy Matz, cruise on over there and click on the folder and you'll see all of her shows over there. And you can pick and choose whatever show you want to hear. Okay? And again, this works the same way. If you haven't subscribed already over YouTube, please feel free to do so. We're almost to that 1,000. We're at 880, I think, is it 95? Yeah, 895. That's where we're at. We're at 895, so we're inching ever so closer to that 1,000 mark. All right, so that's what we're trying to hit, is that magic 1,000 mark. And you know, all these. See, I'm kind of slow today. All these social media places pretty much work the same way. So if you give me a thumbs up and you hit, and all that stuff and talk in the chat room, what that does is it puts us up higher in what they call the For You pages. And on Facebook, it's really easy to find the For You page because it's right on your homepage. If you scroll down, you're going to hit the suggested or the reels, with all the different reels from around the world and whatnot. And then if you go down further, you're going to hit stuff that's suggested for you, and that is what your For You page is. So the more you like and the more you comment, the more the computers at Facebook see you doing that, and they'll put us in the For You, and so people can look at this. Otherwise, okay, share the show. If you like the show and there's somebody in your house that you think might be interested, or in your family, share it across. We're just trying to get the word out, okay? It's like I say at the end, share it with 5 people, share it with 5 people you hate. We're just trying to get the word out, okay? So today is Sunday reading day. We've been reading from Bram Stoker's Dracula. In fact, we're on reading day 8 because I had to read a couple times this last week. I'm going to read for about an hour out of the book. It's usually 2 chapters. Sometimes I read a little more. I'll read more than an hour. It depends on how long the chapters are. Because sometimes he gets carried. I don't know if he gets carried away, but because a lot of the stuff that it's written in diary form for all the characters. So sometimes there's more that pertain to that particular chapter than usual. So like Friday. What night did I read last? It was Thursday, right? Thursday night. Thursday night we went an hour and a half. Okay, so it happens, where we go more than an hour. So just an just FYI. See what I mean? I'm still kind of scrambled up here. So yeah, it could be more than an hour, but it's going to be, it's an interesting book. Lucy, who is one of the main characters in here, has already died. She's turned into a vampire, even though Van Helsing hasn't mentioned it to her lover, to her husband-to-be, and the people that are assisting him, but she has officially died from having all the blood sucked out of her. So apparently she has now turned into or is in the process of turning into a vampire. That's where we left off. They were keeping an eye on her, trying to keep her as safe as they could with garlic wreaths around her neck and things like that. And Yeah, and her mother, who she was taking care of, had heart problems, passed away. So Lucy's kind of had a hard time. So now, the impression I got is Van Helsing is now waiting for her to do that official turn into a vampire. All right, so that's where we left off. And oh yes, and Dr. Seward has been keeping a sharp eye on Renfield because Renfield's been acting up more and more. He's eating his bugs and all that stuff, but he's been able to escape the sanitarium or asylum on a regular basis, and he even almost attacked a couple delivery guys that were there. So he's keeping an eye on Renfield. Now we have not seen the Count uh, since the story left Transylvania for England. However, we know he's there because he's forever outside the windows of this house that these people are living in the shape of a bat, a vampire bat. He's forever banging against the windows and stuff. Oh yeah, and there was a particular wolf at the zoo that he was able to take control of, and he had this wolf come out with him when he finally finished Lucy off to convert her into becoming a vampire. All right, so that's where we're at. Like I said, I normally read for an hour. It just depends on the length of the two chapters. So it might go to an hour and a half. All right. Let me have a quick sip of water and away we go. And you know what? Like it says, get your popcorn and snacks, put your fuzzies on. And for some of you it's evening. For some of you it's 9 p.m. It's 9 p.m. For some of you it's 7 p.m. For us it's I'm sorry. For some of you it's 8 p.m. and for some of you it's 9 p.m. I remember this stuff. Oh, and one more quick thing. I want to thank my producer, Marisa, for coming to get me yesterday to take me to the hospital. I appreciate it. She was not feeling well. She came pick me up. And I want to say a hearty goodbye. I'm going to miss my producer, Carrie Peoples. She's moving to Texas tomorrow. And she's been a great friend, and I'm going to miss her terribly. I think she'll still be involved from afar with the show and with the paranormal team. But it's hard to have a friend go. And I've lost a lot of friends over the past couple of years to death and other things, and it's kind of difficult. But I just want to thank her for everything, etc., etc., etc. Okay, so here we go, and we're going to have some fun, and let's enjoy Bram Stoker's Dracula. And honestly, after watching the movies, you see the Bela Lugosi movies, you see the Bram Stoker movie, all these other movies, it's interesting to read the book and actually see more detail. The detail that he goes into, because he's a terrific writer. Coming from a journalist, the guy's a terrific writer. Okay, so here we go, and let me have a sip of water before we launch here, and off we go. Okay. Since I do not read Roman numerals, here we go again. Chapter X, I. Okay, Dr. Seward's diary continued. My neighbors are having a party next door, so you're going to hear the dog barking off and on. The funeral was arranged for the next succeeding day, so that Lucy and her mother... What time is it right now? Check it. Okay, 6:14. The funeral was arranged for the next succeeding day, so that Lucy and her mother might be buried together. I attended to all the ghastly formalities, and the urbane undertaker proved that his staff were afflicted or blessed with something of his own obsequious suavity. Even the woman who performed the last offices for the dead remarked to me, in a confident, brother professional way, when she had come out from the death chamber, "She makes a very beautiful corpse, sir. It's quite a privilege to attend on her. It's not too much to say that she will do credit to our establishment." I noticed that Van Helsing never kept far away. This was possible from the disordered state of things in the household. There were no relatives at hand, and as Arthur had to be back, Arthur was her lover, and as Arthur had to be back the next day to attend at his father's funeral, we were unable to notify anyone who should have been bidden. Under the circumstances, Van Helsing and I took it upon ourselves to examine papers, etc. He insisted upon looking over Lucy's papers himself. I asked him why, for I feared that he, being a foreigner, might not be quite aware of English legal requirements, and so might, in ignorance, make some unnecessary trouble. He answered me. I know. You forget that I'm a lawyer as well as a doctor, but this is not altogether for the law. You knew that. You knew that when you avoided the coroner. I have more than him to avoid. There may be papers more, such as this. As he spoke, he took from his pocketbook the memorandum which had been in Lucy's breast. and which she had torn in her sleep. Quote, when you find anything of the solicitor, it was for the late Mrs. Westenra. Seal all her papers and write him tonight. For me, I watch here in the room, and in Miss Lucy's old room all night, and I myself search for what may be. It is not well that her very thoughts go into the hands of strangers. I went on with my part of the work, and in another half hour had found the name and address of Mrs. Western's solicitor and had written to him. All the poor lady's papers were in order. Explicit directions regarding the place of burial were given. I had hardly sealed the letter when, to my surprise, Van Helsing walked into the room saying, "Can I help you, friend John? I am free, and if I may, my service is to you." "Have you got what you look for?" I asked, to which he replied, "I did not look for any specific thing. I only hope to find, and find I have, all that there was, only some letters and a few memoranda, and a diary new begun. But I have them here, and we shall for the present say nothing of them. I shall see that poor lad tomorrow evening, and with his sanction, I shall use some." When we had finished the work in hand, he said to me, "And now, friend John, I think we may go to bed. We want sleep, both you and I, and rest to recuperate. Tomorrow we shall have much to do, but for the tonight there is no need of us, alas." Before turning in, we went to look at poor Lucy. The undertaker had certainly done his work well, for the room was turned into a small chapel ardente. There was a wilderness of beautiful white flowers, and death was made as little repulsive as it might be. The end of the winding sheet was laid over the face. When the professor bent over and turned it gently back, we both started at the beauty before us, the tall wax candle showing a sufficient light to note it well. Old Lucy's loveliness had come back to her in death, and the hours that had passed, instead of leaving traces of decay's effacing fingers, had but restored the beauty of life, till positively I could not believe my eyes that I was looking at a corpse. The professor looked sternly grave. He had not loved her as I had, and there was no need for tears in his eyes. He said to me, "Remain till I return," and left the room. He came back with a handful of wild garlic from the box waiting in the hall, but which had not been opened, and placed the flowers among the others and around the bed. Then he took from his neck, inside his collar, a little gold crucifix, and placed it over the mouth. He restored the sheet in its place, and we came away. I was undressing in my own room when, with a premonitory tap at the door, he entered, and at once began to speak. "Tomorrow I want you to bring me, before night, a set of post-mortem knives." "Must we make an autopsy?" I asked. "Yes and no. I want to operate, but not as you think. Let me tell you now, but not a word to another. I want to cut off her head and take out her heart." Ah, he was surgeon, and so shocked. "You, whom I have seen with no tremble of hand or heart, do operations of life and death that make the rest shudder. Oh, but I must not forget, my dear friend John, that you have loved her, and I have not forgotten it. For it is I that shall operate, and you must only help. I would like to do it tonight, but for Arthur I must not. He will be free after his father's funeral tomorrow, and he will want to see her, to see it. Then, when she is coffined, ready for the next day, you and I shall come when all are sleeping. We shall unscrew the coffin lid, and shall do our operation, and then replace all, so that none know, save we alone. But why do it at all? The girl is dead. Why mutilate her poor body without need? And if there is no necessity for a post-mortem, and nothing to gain by it, no good to her, to us, to science, to human knowledge, why do it? Without such, it is monstrous." For answer, he put his hand on my shoulder and said, with infinite tenderness, "Friend John, I pity your poor bleeding heart, and I love you the more because it does so bleed. If I could, I would take on myself the burden that you do bear. But there are things that you know not, but that you shall know, and bless me for knowing, though they are not pleasant things. John, my child, you have been my friend now many years, and yet, did you ever know me to do any without good cause? I may err, but I'm a man. But I believe in all I do. Was it not for these causes that you sent for me when the great trouble came? Yes. Were you not amazed, nay horrified, when I would not let Arthur kiss his love, though she was dying, and snatched him away by all my strength? Yes, and yet you saw how she thanked me, with her so beautiful dying eyes, her voice, too, so weak. And she kissed my rough old hand and blessed me? Yes. And did you not hear me swear, promise to her, so she closed her eyes grateful? Yes? Well, I have good reason now for all I want to do. You have for many years trusted me. Now you have to believe me weeks past, when there will be things so strange that you might have well doubt. Believe me yet a little, friend John. If you trust me not, then I must tell what I think, and that is not perhaps well. And if I work, as work I shall, no matter trust or no trust, without my friend, trust in me. I work with heavy heart and feel, oh, so lonely when I want all help and courage that may be. He paused a moment and went on solemnly. Friend John, there are strange and terrible days before us. Let us not be two, but one, that so we work to a good end. Will you not have faith in me? I took his hand and promised him. I held my door open, and he went away, and watched him go into his room and close the door. As I stood without moving, I saw one of the maids pass silently along the passage. She had her back towards me, so did not see me, and go into the room where Lucy lay. The sight touched me. Devotion is so rare, and we are so grateful to those who show it, unasked to those who we love. Here was a poor girl putting aside the terrors which she naturally had of death to go watch alone by the bier of the mistress whom she loved so that poor day might be lonely till laid to her rest. Remember, this book's written in the 1800s, so, for talking about death and dismembering people and all this, it was a lot different then. Okay, so I'm just putting that out there, and don't turn me into the Facebook police or YouTube police or Twitch police. I must have slept long and soundly, for it was broad daylight when Van Helsing waked me by coming into my room. He came over to my bedside and said, "You need not trouble about the knives. We shall not do it." "Why not?" I asked, for his solemnity of the night before had greatly impressed me. "Because," he said sternly, "it's too late or too early. See?" Here he held up the little golden crucifix. "This was stolen in the night." "How stolen?" I asked in wonder, "since you have it now." Because I got it back from the worthless wretch who stole it. From the woman who robbed the dead and the living. Her punishment will surely come, but not through me. She knew not altogether what she did, and thus unknowingly she only stole. Now we must wait. He went away on the word, leaving me with a new mystery to think of, a new puzzle to grapple with. The forenoon was a dreary time, but at noon the solicitor came. Mr. Wogland of Holman, Sons, Markland, and Litterdale. He was very genial and very appreciative of what we had done, and took off our hands all cares as to the details. During lunch he told us that Mrs. Westerra had for some time expected sudden death from her heart, and had put her affairs in absolute order. He informed us that, with the exception of a certain entailed property of Lucy's father's, which now, in default of direct issue, went back to a distinct branch of the family, the whole estate, real and personal, was left absolutely to Arthur Holmwood, whom he had told us so much, he went on. Frankly, we did our best to prevent such a testimony disposition, and pointed out certain contingencies that might leave her daughter either penniless or not so free as she should be to act regarding a matrimonial alliance. Indeed, we pressed the matter so far that we almost came into collision, for she asked us if we were or were not prepared to carry out her wishes. Of course, we had then no alternative but to accept. We were right in principle, and 99 times out of 100 we should have proved, by the logic of events, the accuracy of our judgment. Frankly, however, I must admit that in this case any other form of disposition would have rendered impossible the carrying out of her wishes. For, by her predeceasing her daughter, the latter would have come into possession of the property, and, even had she only survived her mother by 5 minutes, her property would, in case there were no will, and a will was a practical impossibility in such a case, have been treated decease as under testacy, in which case Lord God, Lord Godalming, though so dear a friend, would have had no claim to the world, and the inheritors, being remote, would not be likely to abandon their just rights for sentimental reasons regarding an entire stranger. I assure you, my dear sirs, I am rejoiced at the result, perfectly rejoiced. He was a good fellow, but his rejoicing at the one little part, in which he was officially interested, of so great a tragedy, was was an object lesson in the limitations of sympathetic understanding. He did not remain long, but said he would look in later in the day and see Lord Godalming. His coming, however, had been a certain comfort to us. I didn't like the bloodsuckers to come out right away, right? Since it assured us that we should not have to dread hostile criticism as to any of our acts. Arthur was expected at 5 o'clock, so a little before that time we visited the death chamber. It was so in very truth, for now both mother and daughter lay in it. The undertaker, true to his craft, had made the best display he could of his goods, and there was a mortuary air about the place that lowered our spirits at once. Van Helsing ordered the former arrangements to be adhered to, explaining that, as Lord Godalming was coming very soon, it would be less harrowing to his feelings to see all that was left of his fiancée quite alone. The undertaker seemed shocked at his own stupidity, and exerted himself to restore things to the condition in which he left them the night before, so that when Arthur came, such shocks to his feelings as we could avoid were saved. Poor fellow! He looked desperately sad and broken. Even his stalwart manhood seemed to have shrunk somewhat under the strain of his much-tried emotions. He had, I knew, been very genuinely and devotedly attached to his father, and to lose him at such a time was a bitter blow to him. With me he was warm as ever, and to Van Helsing he was sweetly courteous. But I could not help seeing that there was some constraint with him. The professor noticed it too, and motioned me to bring him upstairs. I did so, and left him at the door of the room, as I felt he would like to be quite alone with her. But he took my arm and led me in, saying huskily, "You loved her too, old fellow. She told me all about it, and there was no friend had a closer place in her heart than you. I don't know how to thank you for all you've done for her. I can't think yet." Here he suddenly broke down, and threw his arms round my shoulders and laid his head on my breast, crying, "Oh, Jack, Jack, what shall I do? The whole of life seems gone from me all at once, and there is nothing in the wide world for me to live for." I comforted him as well as I could. In such cases men do not need much expression. A grip of the hand, the tightening of an arm over the shoulder, a sob in unison, are expressions of sympathy dear to a man's heart. I stood still and silent till his sobs died away, and then I said softly to him, "Come and look at her." Together we moved over to the bed, and I lifted the lawn from her face. God, how beautiful she was! Every hour seemed to be enhancing her loveliness. It frightened and amazed me somewhat. And, as for Arthur, he fell a trembling, and finally was shaken with doubt, as with an ague. At last, after a long pause, he said to me in a faint whisper, "Jack, is she really dead?" I assured him sadly that it was, and went on to suggest, for I felt that such a horrible doubt should not have life for a moment longer than I could help, that it often happened that after death faces became softened and even resolved into their youthful beauty, that this was especially so when death had been preceded by an acute or prolonged suffering. It seemed to quite do away with any doubt, and after kneeling beside the couch for a while and looking at her lovingly and long, he turned aside. I told him that must be a goodbye, as the coffin had to be prepared, so he went back and took her dead hand in his and kissed it, and bent over and kissed her forehead. He came away, fondly looking back over his shoulder at her as he came. I left him in the drawing-room, and told Van Helsing that he had said goodbye. So the latter went to the kitchen to tell the undertaker's men to proceed with the preparations and to screw up the coffin. When he came out of the room again, I told him of Arthur's question, and he replied, "I'm not surprised. Just now I doubted for a moment myself." We all dined together, and I could see that poor Art was trying to make the best of things. Van Helsing had been silent all dinner time. But when we had lit our cigars, he said, "Lord." But Arthur interrupted him. "No, no, not that. For God's sake, not yet, at any rate. Forgive me, sir. I did not mention to speak offensively. It is only because my loss is so recent." The professor answered very sweetly, "I only used that name because I was in doubt. I must not call you Mr. And I have grown to love you. Yes, my dear boy, to love you as Arthur." Arthur held out his hand and took the old man's warmly. "Call me what you will," he said. "I hope I may always have the title of a friend. And let me say that I am at a loss for words to thank you for your goodness to my poor dear." He paused a moment and went on. "I know that she understood your goodness even better than I do. And if I was rude or in any way wanting at that time, you acted so. You remember?" The professor nodded. "You must forgive me." He answered with a grave kindness. "I know it was hard for you to quite trust me then. For to trust such violence needs to understand and take it the way you do not, that you cannot. Trust me now, for you do not yet understand. And there may be more times when I shall want you to trust and you cannot, and may not, and must not yet understand. But time will come when your trust shall be whole and complete in me, and when you shall understand as though the sunlight himself shone through. Then you shall bless me from the first to last for your own sake, and for the sake of others who, for dear sake, to whom I swore to protect." "And indeed, sir," said Arthur warmly, "I shall in all ways trust you. I know and believe you have a very noble heart, and you are Jack's friend, and you were hers. You shall do what you like." The professor cleared his throat a couple of times, as though about to speak, and finally said, "May I ask you something now?" "Certainly." "You know that Mrs. Westerham left you all her property?" "No, poor dear. I never thought of it. And as it is all yours, you have a right to deal with it as you will. I want you to give me permission to read all of Miss Lucy's papers and letters. Believe me, it is no idle curiosity. I have a motive of which, be sure, she would have approved. I have them all here. I took them before we knew what all was yours, so that no strange hand might touch them. No strange eye look through words into her soul. I shall keep them if I may. Even you may not see them yet, but I shall keep them safe. No word shall be lost, and in the good time I shall give them back to you. It's a hard thing I ask, but will you do it? Will you not for Lucy's sake?" Arthur spoke out hardly, like his old self. "Dr. Van Helsing, excuse my allergies, you may do what you will. I feel that in saying this, I am doing what my dear one would have approved. I shall not trouble you with questions till the time comes." The old professor stood up, as he said, and you are right. There will be pain for us all, but it will not be all pain, nor will this pain be the last. We, and you too, you most of all, my dear boy, will have to pass through the bitter water before we reach the sweet. But we must be brave of heart and unselfish and do our duty, and all will be well. I slept on a sofa in Arthur's room that night. Van Helsing did not go to bed at all. He went to and fro, as if patrolling the house, and was never out of sight of the room where Lucy lay in her coffin, strewn with the wild garlic flowers, which sent, through the odor of lily and rose, a heavy, overpowering smell into the night. Mina Harker's journal, 22 September, in the train to Exeter, Jonathan sleeping. It seems only yesterday that the last entry was made, and yet how much between then, in Whitby, and all the world before me. Jonathan away and no news of him, and now married to Jonathan. Jonathan a solicitor, a partner, rich, master of his business. Mr. Hawkins dead and buried, and Jonathan with another attack that may harm him. Some day he may ask me about it. Down it all goes. I am rusty in my shorthand. See what unexpected prosperity does for us. So it may be as well to freshen up again with an exercise anyhow. The service was very simple and very solemn. There were only ourselves and the servants there. One or two old friends of his from Exeter. His London agent and a gentleman representing Sir John Paxton, the president of the Incorporated Law Society. Jonathan and I stood hand in hand, and we felt that our best and dearest friend was gone from us. We came back to town quietly, taking a bus to Hyde Park Corner. Jonathan thought it would be that it would interest me to go into the row for a while, so we sat down. But there were very few people there, and it was sad looking and desolate to see so many empty chairs. It made us think of the empty chair at home. So we got up and walked down to Piccadilly. Jonathan was holding me by the arm, the way he used to in the old days before I went to school. I felt very improper, for you can't go on for some years teaching etiquette and decorum to other girls without the pedantry of it biting into yourself a bit. But it was Jonathan, and he was my husband, and we didn't know anybody who saw us, and we didn't care if they did. So on we walked. I was looking at a very beautiful girl in a cartwheel hat, sitting in a Victoria outside Giuliano's, when I felt Jonathan clutch my arm so tight that he hurt me, and he said under his breath, "God, I'm always anxious about Jonathan, for I fear that some nervous fit may upset him again." So I turned to him quickly and asked him what it was that disturbed him. He was very pale, and his eyes seemed bulging out, as half in terror and half in amazement. He gazed at a tall, thin man with a beaky nose and black mustache and a pointed beard, who was also observing the pretty girl. He was looking at her so hard that he did not see either of us. And so I had a good view of him. His face was not a good face. It was hard and cruel and sensual, and his big white teeth, that looked all the whiter because his lips were so red, were pointed like an animal's. Jonathan kept staring at him till I was afraid he would notice. I feared he might take it ill. He looked so fierce and nasty. I asked Jonathan why he was disturbed, and he answered evidently, thinking that I knew as much about it as he did. "Do you see who it is?" "No, dear," I said. "I don't know him. Who is it?" His answer seemed to shock and thrill me, for it was said as if he did not know that it was me, Mina, to whom he was speaking. "It is the man himself." The poor dear was evidently terrified at something, very greatly terrified. I do believe that if he had not had me to lean on and to support him, he would have sunk down. He kept staring. A man came out of the shop with a small parcel and gave it to the lady, who then drove off. The dark man kept his eyes fixed on her, and when the carriage moved up Piccadilly, he followed in the same direction and hailed a hansom. Jonathan kept looking after him and said, as if to himself, "I believe it is the Count, but he has grown young. My God, if this be so, oh my God, if only I knew, if only I knew." He was distressing himself so much that I feared to keep his mind on the subject by asking him any questions, so I remained silent. I drew him away quietly, and he, holding my arm, came easily. We walked a little further, and then went in and sat for a while in the Green Park. It was hot. It was a hot day for autumn, and there was a comfortable seat in a shady place. After a few minutes, staring at nothing, Jonathan's eyes closed, and he went quietly into a sleep, with his head on my shoulder. I thought it was the best thing for him, so did not disturb him. In about 20 minutes he woke up and said to me quite cheerfully, "Why, Mina, I have been asleep. Oh, do forgive me for being so rude. Come, and we'll have a cup of tea somewhere." He had evidently forgotten all about the dark stranger, as in his illness he had forgotten all about that this episode had reminded him of. I don't like this lapsing into forgetfulness. It may make or continue some injury to the brain. I must not ask him, for fear I shall do more harm than good. But I must somehow learn the facts of his journey abroad. The time has come, I fear, when I must open that parcel, and I know what is written. Oh, Jonathan, you will, I know, forgive me if I do wrong, but it is for you and your own dear sake. Later, a sad homecoming in every way. The house empty of the dear soul who was so good to us. Jonathan still pale and dizzy under a slight relapse of his malady, and now a telegram from Van Helsing, whoever he may be. "You will be grieved to hear that Mrs. Westenra died 5 days ago, and that Lucy died the day before yesterday. They were both buried today." Oh, what a wealth of sorrow in a few words. Poor Miss Westenra, poor Lucy, gone, never to return to us. And poor Arthur, to have lost such a sweetness of his life. God help us all to bear our troubles. Dr. Seward's Diary. 22 September. It is all over. Arthur has gone back to Ring, and has taken Quincy Morris with him. What a fine fellow is Quincy. I believe in my heart of hearts that he suffered as much about Lucy's death as any of us, but he bore himself through it like a moral Viking. And if America can go on breeding men like that, she will be a power in the future, in the world. Van Helsing is lying down, having a rest preparatory to his journey. He goes over to Amsterdam tonight, but says he returns tomorrow night. That he only wants to make some arrangements which can only be made personally. He is to stop with me then, if he can. He says he has work to do in London, which may take him some time. Poor old fellow. I fear that the strain of the past week has broken down even his iron strength. All the time of the burial he was, I could see, putting some terrible restraint on himself. When it was all over, we were standing beside Arthur, who, poor fellow, was speaking of his part in the operation where his blood had been transfused to Lucy's veins. I could see Van Helsing's face grow white and purple by turns. Arthur was saying that he felt, since then, as if the two had been really married and that she was his wife in the sight of God. None of us said a word of the other operations, and none of us ever shall. Arthur and Quincy went away together to the station, and Van Helsing and I came on here. The moment we were alone in the carriage, he gave way to a regular fit of hysterics. He has denied to me since that it was hysterics, and insisted that it was only his sense of humor asserting itself under very terrible conditions. He laughed till he cried, and I had to draw down the blinds lest anyone should see us and misjudge. And then he cried, till he laughed again, and laughed and cried together, just as a woman does. I tried to be stern with him, as one who is to a woman under the circumstances, but it had no effect. Men and women are so different in manifestations of nervous strength or weakness. Then, when his face grew grave and stern again, I asked him why his mirth, and why at such a time. His reply was in a way characteristic of him, for it was logical and forceful and mysterious. He said, "Ah, you don't comprehend, friend John. Do not think that I am not sad, though I laugh. See, I have cried even when the laugh did choke me. But no more think that I am all sorry when I cry, for the laugh he come just the same. Keep it always with you, that laughter, who knock at your door and say, 'May I come in?' is not the true laughter. No. He is a king, and he come when and how he like. He ask no person. He choose no time or suitability. He say, 'I'm here.' Behold an example. I grieve my heart out for that so sweet young girl. I give my blood for her, though I am old and worn. I give my time, my skill, my sleep. I let my other sufferers want what she so may have all. And yet I can laugh at her very grave laugh when the clay from the spade of the sexton drop upon her coffin and say, thud, thud, to my heart, till it send back the blood from my cheek. My heart bleed for that poor boy, that dear boy, so of the age of mine own body, had I been so blessed that he live, and with his hair and eyes the same. There you know now why I love him so. And yet, when he say things that touch my husband's heart to the quick, and make my father heart yearn to him, and to no other man, not even to you, friend John, for we are more level in experiences than father and son. Yet, even at such moment, King left, he come to me and shout and bellow in my ear, here I am, till the blood comes dancing back and bring some of the sunshine that he carry with him to my cheek. Oh, friend John, it is a strange world, a sad world, a world full of miseries and woes and troubles. And yet, when King laugh come, he make them all dance to the tune he play. Bleeding hearts and dry bones to the churchyard, and tears that burdens they fall. All dance together to the music that he make with what smileless mouth of him. And believe me, friend John, that he is good to come, and kind. Ah, we men and women are like ropes, drawn tight with strain that pull us different directions. Then tears come, and, like the rain on the ropes, they brace us up until perhaps the strain becomes too great and we break. But King Laffy come like the sunshine, and he ease off the strain again, and we bear to go on with our labor, whatever that may be. I did not like to wound him by pretending not to see his idea, but, as I did not yet understand the cause of his laughter, I asked him. As he answered me, his face grew stern, and he said, in quite a different tone, "Oh, it was the grim irony of it all. This so lovely lady garlanded with flowers that looked so fair as life, till one by one we wondered if she were truly dead. She laid in that so fine marble house in that lonely churchyard, where rest so many of her kin, laid there with the mother who loved her, and whom she loved, and that sacred bell going, toll, 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 so sad and slow, and those holy men, with the white garments of the angel, pretending to read books, and yet, all the time, their eyes never on the page, and all of us with the bowed head. And all for what? She's dead. So is it not?" "Well, for the life of me, Professor," I said, "I can't see anything to laugh at in all that. Why, your explanation makes it a harder puzzle than before. But even if the burial service was comic, what about poor Art and his trouble? Why his heart was simply breaking?" "Just so," said he, not that transfusion of his blood into her veins had made her truly his bride." Yes, and it was a sweet and comforting idea for him. "Quite so. But there was a difficulty, friend John. If so then what about the others? Ho, ho! Then, this so sweet maid is a philanderist, and me, with my poor wife dead to me, but alive by Church's law, through no wits, all gone, even I, am a faithful husband to this now no wife, and bigamist. I don't see where the joke comes from in there either," I said, and I did not feel particularly pleased with him for saying such things. He laid his hand on my arm and said, "Friend John, forgive me if I pain. I showed not my feeling to others when it wound, but only to you, my old friend, whom I can trust. If you could have looked into my very heart, then, when I want to laugh, if you could have done so when the laugh arrived, if you could do so now, when King Laugh have pack up his crown, and all that is to him, for he go far, far away from me, and for a long, long time, maybe you would perhaps pity me for most of it." I was touched by the tenderness of his tone, and asked why. "Because I know. And now we are all scattered, and for many a long day loneliness will sit over our roofs with brooding wings. Lucy lies in the tomb of her kin, a lordly death house in a lonely churchyard, away from teeming London, where the air is fresh, and the sun rises over the Hampstead Hill, and where wildflowers grow on their own accord. So I can finish this diary, and God only knows if I shall ever begin another. If I do, or if I even open this again, it will be to deal with different people and different themes. For here at the end, where the romance of my life is told, ere I go back to take up the thread of my life work, I say sadly and without hope, finis. The Westminster Gazette, 25 September, a Hampstead Mystery. Let me grab a drinky. Great book. Love it, love it, love it. Okay, I know you guys can hear me swallow. That's kind of funny. The neighborhood of Hampstead is just at present exercised with a series of events which seem to run on lines parallel to those of what was known to the writers of headlines as the Kensington Horror, or the Stabbing Woman, or the Woman in Black. During the past 2 or 3 days, several cases have occurred of young children straying from home, neglecting to return from their playing on the heath. In all these cases, the children were too young to give any properly intelligible account of themselves, but the consensus of their excuses is that they had been with a bloofer lady. It has always been late in the evening when they have been missed, and on 2 occasions the children have not been found until early in the following morning. It is generally supposed in the neighborhood that, as the first child missed gave us his reason for being away, that a bloofer lady had asked him to come for a walk, the others had picked up the phrase and used it as occasion served. This is the more natural, as the favorite game of the little ones at present is luring each other away by wiles. A correspondent writes us that to see some of the tiny tots pretending to be the Bloofer lady is supremely funny. Some of our caricatures might, he says, take a lesson in the irony of grotesque by comparing the reality and the picture. It is, a, it is only in accordance with the general principles of human nature that the Bloofer lady should be the popular role at these al fresco performances. Our correspondent naively says that even Ellen Terry could not be so winningly attractive as some of these grubby faced little children pretend, and even imagine themselves to be. There is, however, possibly a serious side to the question. For some of the children, indeed, all who have been missed at night, have been slightly torn or wounded in the throat. These wounds seem to be as might be made by a rat or small dog, and although of not much importance, individually, would tend to show that whatever animal inflicts them has a system or method of its own. The police of the division have been instructed to keep a sharp lookout for straying children, especially when very young in and around Hampstead Heath, and for any stray dog which may be about. The Westminster Gazette, 25 September. Extra special, the Hampstead Horror, another child injured. The Bloofer lady. We have just received intelligence that another child, missed last night, was only discovered late in the morning under a furze bush at the Shooter's Hill side of Hampstead Heath, which is, perhaps, less frequent than the other parts. It has the same tiny wound in the throat as has been noticed in other cases. It was terribly weak and looked quite emaciated. It, too, when partially restored, had the common story to tell of being lured away by the Bloofer lady. Okay, so it's now 6:53. We're going to start another chapter, so it looks like we are going to go beyond 6:15, so bear with me, and like I said, sit back, tear the lights down, and then as soon as we're done reading, that'll be it for today, but here we go. Chapter XIV. Mina Harker's Journal, 23 September. Jonathan is better after a bad night. I'm so glad that he has plenty of work to do, for that keeps his mind off the terrible things. And, oh, I'm rejoiced that he is not now weighted down with the responsibility of his new position. I knew he would be true to himself, and now, how proud I am to see my Jonathan rising to the height of his advancement and keeping pace, in all ways with the duties that come upon him. He will be away all day till late, for he said he could not lunch at home. My household work is done, so I shall take his foreign journal and lock myself up in my room and read it. 24 September. I hadn't the heart to write last night. That terrible record of Jonathan's upset me so. Poor dear. How he must have suffered, whether it be true or only imagination. I wonder if there is any truth in it at all. Did he get his brain fever and then write all those terrible things? Or had he some cause for it all? I suppose I shall never know, for I dare not open the subject to him. And yet, that man we saw yesterday, he seemed quite certain of him. Poor fellow, I suppose it was the funeral upset him and set his mind back on some train of thought. He believes in old self. I remember how on our wedding day he said, unless some solemn duty come upon me to go back to the bitter hours, asleep or awake, mad or sane, there seems to be, through it all, some thread of continuity. That fearful Count was coming to London. If it should be, and he came to London with his teeming millions, there may be a solemn duty, and if it come, we must not shrink from it. I shall be prepared. I shall get my typewriter this very hour and begin transcribing. Then we shall be ready for other eyes if required. And if it be wanted, then perhaps, if I am ready, poor Jonathan may not be upset. For I can speak for him and... Whoa, just jumped on me. For I can speak for him and never let him be troubled or worried with it at all. If ever Jonathan quite gets over the nervousness, he may want to tell me of it all, and I can ask him questions and find out things and see how I can comfort him. Letter. Van Helsing to Mrs. Harker. Welcome to everybody who's joining us. You guys aren't in the chat room, but I see you. There's 3 of you lurking out there. Welcome. 24 September. Confidence. Dear Madam, I pray you to pardon my writing, and that I'm so far Friend, as that I sent you to sad news of Miss Lucy Westerner's death. By the kindness of Lord Godalming, Galming, I am empowered to read her letters and papers, for I am deeply concerned about certain matters vitally important. In them I find some letters from you, which show how great friends you were and how you loved her. Oh, Madamina, by that love I implore you, help me. It is for others' goods that I ask, to redress great wrong, and to lift much and terrible troubles that may be more great than you can even imagine. May it be that I see you? You can trust me. I am a friend of John Seward and of Lord... There we go, and of Lord Godalming. Finally got it. That was Arthur of Miss Lucy. I must keep it private for the present from all. I should come to Exeter to see you at once. If you tell me, I am privileged to come, and where and when, I implore your pardon. I have read your letters to poor Lucy, and know how good you are, and how your husband suffers. So I pray you, if it may be, enlighten him not, lest it may harm. Again, your pardon, and forgive me. Van Helsing. Telegram. Mrs. Harker to Van Helsing. 25 September. Come today by 10:15 train if you can catch it. Can see you anytime you call. Wilhelmina Harker. Mina Harker's journal. 25 September. I cannot help feeling terribly excited as the time draws near for the visit of Dr. Van Helsing. For somehow I expect that it will throw some light upon Jonathan's sad experience, and as he attended poor dear Lucy in her last illness, he can tell me all about her. That is the reason for his coming. It is concerning Lucy and her sleepwalking, and not about Jonathan. Then I shall never know the real truth now. How silly I am. That awful journal gets hold of my imagination and tinges everything with something in its own color. Of course, it's about Lucy. That habit came back to the poor dear, and that awful night on the cliff must have made her ill. I had almost forgotten, in my own affairs, how ill she was afterwards. She must have told him of her sleepwalking adventure on the cliff, and that I knew all about it, and now he wants me to tell him what she knows, so that he may understand. I hope I did right, not saying anything of it to Mrs. Westerner. I should never forgive myself if any act of mine, were it even a negative one, just making sure, brought harm on poor dear Lucy. I hope, too, Dr. Van Helsing will not blame me. I have had so much trouble and anxiety of late that I feel I cannot bear more just at present. I suppose a cry does us all good at times. Clears the air as the rain does. Perhaps it was reading the journal yesterday that upset me, and then Jonathan went away this morning to stay away from me a whole day and night, the first time we have been parted since our marriage. I do hope the dear fellow will take care of himself, and that nothing, will occur to upset him. It is 2 o'clock, and the doctor will be here soon now. I shall say nothing of Jonathan's journal, unless he asks me. I'm so glad I've typewritten out my own journal, so that, in case he asks about Lucy, I can hand it to him. It will save much questioning. Later. He has come and gone. Oh, what a strange meeting, and how it all makes my head whirl round. I feel like one in a dream. Can it all be possible, or even part of it? If I had not read Jonathan's journal first, I should never have accepted even a possibility. Poor dear Jonathan, how he must have suffered. Please, the good God, all this may not upset him again. I shall try to save him from it, but it may be even a consolation and a help to him. Terrible though it, and awful of its consequences, to know for certain that his eyes and ears and brain did not deceive him, and that it is all true. It may be that it is the doubt which haunts him, that when the doubt is removed, no matter which waking or dreaming may prove the truth, he will be more satisfied and better able to bear the shock. Dr. Van Helsing must be a good man as well as a clever one, if he is Arthur's friend and Dr. Seward's, and if they brought him all the way from Holland to look after Lucy. I feel from having seen him that he is good and kind and of a noble nature. When he comes tomorrow, I shall ask him about Jonathan, and then, please God, all this sorrow and anxiety may lead to a good end. I used to think I would like to practice interviewing Jonathan's friend on the Exeter News. Told him that memory was everything in such work, that you must be able to put down exactly almost every word spoken, even if you had to refine some of it afterwards. Here was a rare interview I shall try to record it verbatim. It was 2:30 when the knock came. I took my courage, a Duke's Mains, and waited. In a few minutes, Mary opened the door and announced Dr. Van Helsing. I rose and bowed, and he came towards me, a man of medium weight, strongly built, with his shoulders set back over a broad, deep chest and a neck well balanced on the trunk, as the head is on the neck. The poise of the head strikes one at once as indicative of thought and power. The head is noble, well-sized, broad, and large behind the ears. The face, clean-shaven, shows a hard, square chin, a large, resolute, mobile mouth, a good-sized nose, rather straight, but with quick, sensitive nostrils that seem to broaden as the big, bushy brows come down on the mouth and the mouth tightens. The forehead is broad and fine, rising at first almost straight and then sloping back above two bumps or ridges wide apart. Such a forehead that the reddish hair cannot possibly tumble over it, but falls naturally back and to the sides. Big dark blue eyes are set widely apart and are quick and tender or stern with the man's moods. He said to me, "Mrs. Harker, is it not?" I bowed assent. "That was Miss Mina Murray?" Again I assented. "It is Mina Murray that I came to see. That was friend of that poor dear child Lucy Westerner. Madam Mina, it is on account of the dead I come." "Sir," I said, "you could have no better claim on me than that you were a friend and helper of Lucy." And I held out my hand. He took it and said tenderly, "Oh, Madam Mina, I knew that a friend of that poor Lily girl must be good, but I had yet to learn." He finished his speech with a courtly bow. I asked him what it was that he wanted to see me about, and he at once began. "I have read your letters to Lucy. Forgive me, but I have to begin to inquire somewhere, and there was none to ask. I know that you were with her at Whitby. She sometimes kept a diary. You need not look surprised. Madam Mina, it was begun after you had left, and was in imitation of you. And in that diary she traces by inference certain things to a sleepwalking in which she puts down that you saved her. In great perplexity, then, I come to you and ask you, out of your so much kindness, to tell me all of it that you can remember." I can tell you, I think, Dr. Van Helsing, all about it. And then, then you have good memory for facts. For details, it's not always so with young ladies. No, doctor, but I wrote it all down at the time. I can show it to you if you'd like. Oh, Madam Mina, I would be so grateful. You will do me much favor. I could not resist the temptation of mystifying him a bit. I suppose it is some of the taste of the original apple that remains still in our mouths. So I handed him the shorthand diary. He took it with a grateful bow and said, "May I read it?" "If you wish," I answered, and demurely as I could, he opened it. And for an instant his face fell. Then he stood up and bowed. "Oh, you so clever woman. I knew long that Mr. Jonathan was a man of much thankfulness, but see, his wife have all the good things. And you will not so much honor me as to help me to read this for me." Alas, I know not the shorthand. By this time my little joke was over, and I was almost ashamed. So I took the typewritten copy from my work basket and handed it to him. "Forgive me," I said. "I could not help it. But I had been thinking about that it was of dear Lucy that you wished to ask, and so that you might not have the time to wait, not on my account, but because I know your time must be precious, I have written it out on the typewriter for you." He took it, and his eyes glistened. "You're so good," he said, "and I may read it now? I may want to ask you some things, after I've read." "By all means," I said. "Read it over whilst I order lunch, and then you can ask me questions whilst we eat." He bowed and settled himself into a chair with his back to the light, and became absorbed in the papers, whilst I went to see after lunch, chiefly in order that he might not be disturbed. When I came back, I found him walking hurriedly up and down the room, his face all ablaze with excitement. He rushed up to me and took me by both hands. "Oh, Madam Mina," he said, "how can I say what I owe to you? This paper is is as sunshine. It opens the gate to me. I am dazed. I am dazzled with so much light, and yet clouds rolling behind the light every time. But that you do not, cannot comprehend. Oh, but I'm grateful to you, you so clever woman. Madam, he said this very solemnly, if ever Abraham Van Helsing can do anything for you or yours, I trust you will let me know. It will be a pleasure and delight if I may serve you as a friend, and as a friend. But all I have ever learned, all I can ever do, shall be for you and those you love. There are darknesses in life, and there are lights. You are one of the lights. You will have a happy life and good life, and your husband will be blessed in you. But doctor, you praise me too much, and you do not know me. Not know you, I, who am old, and who have studied all my life men and women. I, who have made my specialty the brain and all that belongs to him and all that follow from him. And I have read your diary that you have so goodly written for me, and which breathes out truth in every line. I, who have set your so sweet letter to poor Lucy, and your marriage and your trust. Not know you, not know you. Oh, Madam Mia, good woman tell all their lives, and by day and by hour and by minute, such things that angels can read, and we men who wish to know have in us something of angels' eyes. Your husband is noble nature, and you are noble too, for you trust, and trust cannot be where there is mean nature. And your husband, tell me of him. Is he quite well? Is all that fever gone? And is he strong and hearty? I saw here an opening to ask him about Jonathan, so I said, he was almost recovered, but he has been greatly upset by Mr. Hawkins' death. He interrupted. Oh yes, I know. I have read your last two letters, I went on. I suppose this upset him, for when we were in town on Thursday last, he had a sort of shock. A shock. And after brain fever so soon. That was not good. What kind of shock was it? He thought he saw someone who recalls something terrible. Something which led to his brain fever. And here the whole thing seemed to overwhelm him in a rush. The pity for Jonathan, the horror which he experienced, the whole fearful mystery of his diary, and the fear that has been brooding over me ever since, all came in a tumult. I suppose I was hysterical, for I threw myself on my knees and held up my hands to him, and implored him to make my husband well again. He took my hands and raised me up and made me sit on the sofa and sat by me. He held my hand in his and said to me with, oh, such infinite sweetness, my life is a barren and lonely one, and so full of work that I have not yet had much time for friendships. But since I have been summoned to be here by my friend John Seward, I have known so many good people and seen such nobility that I feel more than ever, and it has grown with my advancing years. The loneliness of my life. Believe me, then, that I come here full of respect for you, and you have given me hope. Hope, not in what I am seeking of, but that there are good women still left to make life happy, good women, whose lives and whose truths may make good lesson for the children that are to be. I am glad that I may be here, be of some use to you, for if your husband suffer, he suffer within the range of my study and experience. I promise you that I will gladly do all for him that I can, and all to make his life strong and manly, and your life a happy one. Now you must eat. You are overwrought and perhaps over-anxious. Husband Jonathan would not like to see you so pale, and what he like or not, where he love, is not to his good. Therefore, for his sake, you must eat and smile. You have told me all about Lucy, and so now we shall not speak of it, lest it distress. I shall stay in Exeter tonight, for I want to think much over what you have told me. And when I have thought it, I will ask you questions, if I may. And then, too, you will tell me of husband Jonathan's trouble so far as you can, but not yet. So far as you can, but not yet. You must eat now. Afterwards, you shall tell me. After lunch, when we went back to the drawing room, he said to me, and now tell me all about him. When it came to speaking to this great learned man, I began to fear that he would think me a weak fool, and Jonathan a madman. That journal is oh so strange, and I hesitated to go on. But he was so sweet and kind, and he had promised to help, and I trusted him. So I said, Dr. Van Helsing, what I have to tell you is so queer that you must not laugh at me or at my husband. I have been, since yesterday, in a sort of fever of doubt. You must be kind to me, and not think of me foolish, that I have even half believed some of the very strange things. He reassured me by his manner, as well as his words, when he said, Oh, my dear, if you only know how strange is the matter regarding which I am here, it is you who would laugh. I have learned not to think. I have learned not to think little of anyone's belief, no matter how strange it may be. I have tried to keep an open mind, and it is not the ordinary things of life that could close it, but the strange things, the extraordinary things, the things that make one doubt if they be matter sane. Thank you, thank you, 1,000 times. You have taken a weight off my mind. If you will let me, I shall give you a paper to read. It is long, but I have typewritten it out. It will tell you my trouble and Jonathan's. It is a copy of his journal when abroad, and all that happened. I dare not say anything of it. You will read for yourself and judge, and then, when I see you, perhaps, you will be very kind and tell me what you think. I promise, he said, as I gave him the papers. I shall in the morning, so soon as I can, come to see you and your husband, if I may. Jonathan will be here at 11:30, and you must come to lunch with us and see him then. You could catch the quick 3:34 train, which will leave you at Paddington before 8. He was surprised at my knowledge of the trains offhand, but he does not know that I have made up all the trains to and from Exeter, so that I may help Jonathan in case he is in a hurry. So he took the papers with him and went away, and I sit here thinking I don't know what. Letter by hand, Van Helsing to Mrs. Harker, 25 September, 6 o'clock. Dear Madam Mina, I have read your husband's so wonderful diary. You may sleep without doubt. Strange and terrible as it is true. I will pledge my life on it. It may be worse for others, but for him and you there is no dread. He is a noble fellow, and let me tell you from experience of men, that one who would do as he did in going down that wall, and to that room, and going the second time, is not one to be injured in permanence by a shock. His brain and his heart are all right. This I swear. Before I leave, or before I have even seen him, so be at rest. I shall have much to ask him of other things. I am blessed that today I come to see you, for I have learned all at once so much that again I am dazzled more than ever. I must think. He probably, some of these things are missing the EDs on them. These have been translated. These things are translated by people for, in ebook form from the original text. So that's why, some of this sounds, we're like dazzled. Again, I am dazzled. So be dazzled more than ever. And I must think. So that's why it's like that. You're the most faithful, Abraham Van Helsing. Letter, Mrs. Harker to Van Helsing, 25 September, 6:30 p.m. My dear Dr. Van Helsing, 1,000 thanks for your kind letter, which was taking a great weight off my mind. And yet, if it be true, what terrible things there are in the world, and what an awful thing if that man, that monster, be really in London. I fear to think. I have this moment whilst writing, had a wire from Jonathan saying that he leaves by 6:25 tonight from Lancashire and will be here at 10:18, so that I shall have no fear tonight. Will you, therefore, instead of lunching with us, please come to breakfast at 8 o'clock, if this be not too early for you. You can get away, if you are in a hurry, by the 10:30 train, which will bring you to Paddington by 2:35. Do not answer this, as I shall take it that I do not hear. You will come to breakfast. Believe me, your faithful and grateful friend, Mina Harker. Jonathan Harker's Journal, 26 September. I thought never to write in this diary again. The time has come. When I got home last night, Mina had supper ready, and when we had supped, she told me of Van Helsing's visit, and of her having given him the 2 diaries copied out, and of how anxious she's been about me. She showed me in the doctor's letter that all I wrote down was true. It seems to have made a new man of me. It was the doubt as to the reality of the whole thing that knocked me over. I felt impotent, and in the dark and distressful. But now that I know, I'm not afraid, even of the Count. He has succeeded after all, then, in his design of getting to London, and it was he I saw. He has got younger, and how? Van Helsing is the man to unmask him and hunt him, if he's anything like Mina says. We sat late and talked it all over. Mina is dressing, and I shall call at the hotel in a few minutes. Did you guys hear that? It was like a swishing sound. I got paranormal stuff going on here. It's really been creepy. And bring him over. It's probably because I'm hurt and my family's here, but still, it's just take it down a notch, you guys. He was, I think, surprised to see me. When I came into the room where he was and introduced myself, he took me by the shoulder and turned my face round to the light and said, after sharp scrutiny, "But Madam Mina told me you were ill, that you had a shock." It was so funny to hear my wife called Madam Mina by this kindly, strong-faced old man. I smiled and said, "I was ill. I've had a shock, but you have cured me already." "And how?" "By your letter to Mina just last night." I was in doubt, and that everything took a hue of unreality, and I did not know what to trust, even the evidence of my own senses. Not knowing what to trust, I did not know what to do, and so had only to keep on working, in what had hitherto been the groove of my life. The groove ceased to avail me, and I mistrusted myself, Doctor. You don't know what it is to doubt everything, even yourself. No, you don't. You couldn't with eyebrows like yours. He seemed pleased and laughed as he said, "So, you are a Physiognomis. Yeah, I'm not going to try it today. I'm going to say physio. We'll leave it at that. I learned more here with each hour, and I'm so much pleasure coming to you to breakfast. And, oh, sir, you will pardon praise from an old man, but you are blessed in your wife." I would listen to him go on praising Mina for a day, so I simply nodded and stood silent. She is one of God's women, fashioned by his own hand to show us men and other women that there is a heaven where we can enter, and that its light can be here on earth. So true, so sweet, so noble, so little in ego, and that, let me tell you, is much in this age. So skeptical and selfish. And you, sir, I have read all the letters to poor Miss Lucy, and some of them speak of you, so I know you sent some days from the knowing of the others. But I have seen your true self since last night. You will give me your hand, will you not? And let us be friends for all our lives. We shook hands, and he was so earnest and so kind that it made me quite choky. "And now," he said, "may I ask you for some more help? I have a great task to do, and at the beginning it is to know. You can help me here. Can you tell me what went before you're going to Transylvania? Later on I may ask you more help, and of a different kind, but at first this will do." "Look here, sir," I said. "Does what you have to do concern the Count?" "It does," he said solemnly. "Then I'm with you, heart and soul. As you go by 10:30 train, you will not have time to read them, but I shall get you the bundle of papers. You can take them with you and read them on the train." After breakfast, I saw him to the station. When we were parting, he said, "Perhaps you will come to town if I send you, and take Madam Mina too. We shall both come when you will," I said. I had got him the morning papers, and the London papers of the previous night. And while we were talking at the carriage window, waiting for the train to start, he was turning them over. His eyes suddenly seemed to catch something in one of them, the Westminster Gazette. I knew it by the color, and he grew quite white. He read something intently, groaning to himself. Mein Gott, mein Gott. So soon, so soon. I did not think he remembered me at the moment. Just then the whistle blew and the train moved off. This recalled him to himself, and he leaned out the window and waved his hand, calling out, "Love to Madam Mina. I shall write so soon as ever I can." Dr. Seward's Diary, 26 September. Truly, there is no such thing as fidelity. Not a week since I said Finis, And yet here I am staring fresh again, or rather going on, with the same record. Until this afternoon I had no cause to think of what is done. Renfield had become, to all intents, as sane as he ever was. He was already well ahead with his fly business, and he had just started in the spider line also. So he had not been of any trouble to me. I had a letter from Arthur, written on Sunday, and from it I gather that he is bearing up wonderfully well. Quincy Morris is with him, and that is much of a help, for he himself is a bubbling well of good spirits. Quincy wrote me a line too, and from him I hear that Arthur is beginning to recover something of his old buoyancy. So as to them, all my mind is set to rest. As for myself, I was settling down to my work with the enthusiasm which I used to have for it, so that I might fairly have said that the wound which poor Lucy left on me was becoming cicatrized. Everything is, however, now reopened. And what is to be the end of God only knows. What is to be the end, God only knows. I have an idea that Van Helsing thinks he knows too, but he will only let out enough at a time to whet my curiosity. He went to Exeter yesterday and stayed there all night. Today he came back and almost bounded into the room at about 5:30, and thrust last night's Westminster Gazette into my hand. "What do you think of that?" he asked as he stood back and folded his arms. I looked over the paper, and I really did not know what he meant, but he took it from me and pointed out a paragraph about children being decoyed away from Hampstead. It did not convey much to me, until I reached a passage where it described small puncture wounds on their throats. And an idea struck me, and I looked up. "Well," he said, "it's like poor Lucy's. And what do you make of it?" "Simply that there is some cause in common. Whatever it was that injured her has injured them." I did not quite understand his answer. "That is true indirectly, but not directly." "How do you mean, Professor?" I asked. I was a little inclined to take his seriousness lightly, for, after all, 4 days of rest and freedom from bumming, harrowing anxiety does help to restore one's spirits. But when I saw his face, it sobered me. Never even in the midst of our despair about poor Lucy had he looked more stern. "Tell me," I said. "I can hazard no opinion. I do not know what to think, and I have no data on which to found a conjecture." "Do you mean to tell me, friend John, that you have no suspicion as to what poor Lucy died of? Not after all the hints given, not only by events, but by me?" "Of nervous prostration following on great loss or waste of blood, and how the blood how the blood was lost or waste." I shook my head. He stepped over and sat down beside me and went on. "You're a clever man. You reason well, and your wit is bold, but you are too prejudiced. You will not let your eyes see nor your ears hear, and that which is outside your daily life is not of account to you. Do you not think that there are things which you cannot understand, and yet which are? That some people see things that others cannot. But there are things old and new which must not be contemplated by men's eyes, because they know, or think they know, some things which other men have told them." Right? Okay. It is the fault of our science that it wants to explain all. And if it explain not, then it says there is nothing to explain. But yet we see around us every day the growth of new beliefs, which think themselves new, and which are yet but the old, which pretend to be young. Like the fine ladies in the opera. I suppose now you do not believe in corporal transference, no? Nor in the materialization, no? Nor in astral bodies, no? Nor in the reading of thought, no? Nor in hypnotizing people. "Yes," I said. "Jarko has proved that pretty well." He smiled as he went on. "Then you are satisfied as to it, correct? And of course, then you understand how it acts, and can follow the mind of the great Charcot, alas that he is no more, into the very soul of the patient that he influences." No? Then, friend John, am I to take it that you simply accept fact and are satisfied to let from premise to conclusion be a blank? No? Then tell me, for I am student of the brain, how you accept the hypnotism and reject the thought reading. Let me tell you, my friend, that there are things done today in electrical science which would have been deemed unholy by the very men who discovered the electricity, who would themselves not so long before have been burned as wizards. There's always mysteries in life. Why was it that Methuselah, I can say that, I can say other stuff, go figure, lived 900 years, and old Parr 169, and yet that poor Lucy, with 4 men's blood in her poor veins, could not live even one day? 4. Had she lived one more day, we could have saved her. Do you know all the mystery of life and death? Do you know the altogether of the comparative anatomy, and can say wherefore the qualities of brutes are in some men and not in others? Can you tell me why, when other spiders die smallest and soon, that one great spider lived for centuries in the tower of the old Spanish church and grew, till on descending he could drink the oil of all the church lamps? Can you tell me why in the Pampas, and elsewhere, there are bats that come at night and open the veins of cattle and horses and suck dry their veins? How in some islands of the western seas there are bats which hang on the trees all day, and those who have seen described as like giant nuts or pods, and that when the sailors sleep on the deck, because that is hot, flit down on them, and then in the morning are found dead men, white as even Miss Lucy was. Good God, Professor, I said, starting up, do you mean to tell me that Lucy was bitten by such a bat, and that such a thing is here in London in the 19th century? He waved his hand for silence and went on. Can you tell me why the tortoise lives more long than generations of men? Why the elephant goes on until he has seen dynasties? And why the parrot never die, only it bites? See what I mean? There should be an S there. And why the parrot never dies, only it bites, of cats or dogs or other complaint? Can you tell me why men believe in all ages and places that there are some few who live on always if they be permanent, or if they, be permit? That there are men and women who cannot die. We all know, because science has vouched for the fact, that there have been toads shut up in rocks for thousands of years, shut in one so small hole that only holds him since the youth of the world. Can you tell me how the Indian fakir can make himself to die and have been buried, and his grave sealed and corn sowed on it, and the corn reaped and be cut and sown and reaped and cut again, and then men come and take away the unbroken seal, and that there lie the Indian fakir not dead, but that rise up and walk amongst them as before? Here I interrupted him. I was getting bewildered. He so crowded on my mind his list of nature's eccentricities, and impossibilities, that my imagination was getting fired. I had a dim idea that he was teaching me some lesson, as long ago he used to do in his study at Amsterdam. But he used then to tell me the thing, so that I could have the object of thought in my mind all the time. But now I was without this help, yet I wanted to follow him. So I said, Professor, let me be your pet student again. Tell me the thesis, so that I may apply your knowledge as you go on. At present, I'm going in my mind from point to point as a madman, and not a sane one follows an idea. I feel like a novice lumbering through a bog in a mist, jumping from one tussock to another, in the mere blind effort to move on without knowing where I'm going. That is good image, he said. Well, I'll tell you. My thesis is this. I want you to believe. To believe what? To believe in things that you cannot. Let me illustrate. I heard once of an American who so defined faith, that faculty which enables us to believe things which we know to be untrue. For one, I followed that man. He meant that we shall have an open mind and not let a little bit of truth check the rush of big truth, like a small rock does a railway truck. We get the small truth first. Good. We keep him and we value him. But all the same, we must not let him think himself all the truth. Then you want me not to let some previous conviction injure the receptivity of my mind with regard to some strange matter. Do I read your lesson right? Ah, you're my favorite pupil still. It is worth to teach you. Now, what you are willing to understand, you have taken the first step to understand. You think, then, that those so small holes in the children's throats were made by the same being that made the hole in Miss Lucy? I suppose so, he stood up and said solemnly. Then you are wrong. Oh, would it be so? But alas, no, it's worse. Far, far worse. In God's name, Professor Van Helsing, what do you mean? I cried. He threw himself with a despairing gesture into a chair and placed his elbows on the table, covering his face with his hands as he spoke. They were made by Miss Lucy. That's it. Next chapter is chapter XV, and we'll be starting that next week, next Sunday. So see, it's getting interesting, because Lucy is out and about, obviously. Let me turn this thing off real quick. Whoops, maybe not. Maybe not that quick, huh? That was really good. But I can see why some of these chapters go longer than others, because, he starts writing this stuff, and where do you get to the point where you do a cutoff? And as a writer, you're always looking for that point where you can do a cutoff and then start the next chapter. And I can see why, in some cases, yikes, it would be difficult to do. Okay, well, we're done for this week, and we will continue this next Sunday, barring any cancellations from people to be on the air. Tomorrow night, strap yourselves in, 6:30 p.m. Pacific. Gemma Jade is going to join me, and she is going to talk about, drumroll please, black-eyed kids. So we're going to have that talk. I always tell the story here. I have a whole house fan. I don't have AC here, just in this room. I have a whole house fan that you have to open the windows and doors to circulate the air through once it's on. Well, see, by the time I get off here, because my house stays very hot because there's no AC. There's no AC and no tree to cool the back off. So once the sun moves to the west, everything comes into the house. So the house stays like a furnace. I always joke going into my backyard in the summer is like opening the gates of hell and walking out. So the house stays hot. So I have to wait until the cool down occurs, especially on those 110 days and stuff. Sometimes it doesn't start cooling down till like 1 a.m., 2 a.m. So then I go out there after I'm done working in here. I go out there, turn the whole house fan on, open my front door. And like I said, I have that security gate on the front door, with the lock and everything. That I became one with yesterday. But I have that gate on the front door, so I have to leave the front door open to blow the house out. And that's my fear, because I can see the front door from my couch in my living room. And that's my fear, is that some black-eyed kids are going to walk up to my front door, and the next thing I'm going to hear is let me in. Creepy, especially at night, like that. And I'll run it till like 4 or 5 in the morning to cool the house down. So, yeah, that's one of my biggest fears, that someone's going to walk up. It might not even be them. It could be some other person or thing walking up. Thank God I have dogs. But, yeah, the black-eyed kids. Of course, I would never let them in for obvious reasons. So tomorrow at 6:30 p.m., Gemma Jade, who is a paranormal researcher and an author and a talk show host, just like me, she's going to be here to talk about BK, which is black-eyed kids. So that's something to watch for. I will be here at 6:30 tomorrow. I want to thank everybody for coming today. I really appreciate it. I have made the changes on the Patreon, and starting Tuesday, you guys will be able to see that, and I've got a little ad thing coming out for you guys to watch, to get you over there and to check it out and all that. So that'll be coming out as well. But as far as today goes, thank you so much for joining me. I know everybody's tired. Most of you are on vacation. You're still out vacationing, and you're just coming back and all that good stuff. But it's Sunday, and tomorrow's probably a work day for you guys. So I really appreciate you guys hanging with me, especially the people on the East Coast, because now it's 10:36 where you're at? So 10:36 p.m. where you're at on the East Coast, and 9:36 if you're in Texas and all those other places. So I want to thank you all for sticking with me for this, and I really appreciate it. This has been a great book so far, and I think we're halfway through on this book now. I think we hit the halfway mark. So thank you all, and I really appreciate each and every one of you. If you like the show, share it with 5 people. If you hated the show, share it with 5 of your enemies. We are equal opportunity here, California House Radio, trying to get the word out. Just trying to get the word out, spread, and build it up. Baby steps, building. So I really appreciate it. So I will see you tomorrow at 6:30 p.m. Pacific for Gem and Jade and Black Eyed Kids. Have a great rest of your evening, and bye.